And welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. I'm Ace McKay, ready to help wind down the summer, jump into a new season. I'm excited about fall and knowing that we have chances to increase our faith and trust in God by diving into Podcast Central. Great conversations always happening there as we get to know a little bit more about ourselves and the shows that are available anytime you want to stream on demand. We always love to jumpstart the weekend by getting into the Mass readings for this week. So let's check in with your word on the Word.
I grew up in the South, so I've heard a lot of Southern sayings. But I always knew I was crossing the line when I heard my mama snap, "You best watch your mouth."
I don't know whether to ask what you were saying when she said that or where you're taking this next.
Well, it's about this Sunday's readings, of course.
This weekend, we hear from Mark's Gospel.
The disciples and Jesus were eating a meal together when the scribes and Pharisees came for an visit and pointed out that some of the disciples weren't following the tradition of the elders.
They asked Jesus why his disciples weren't performing the ritual cleansing that the elders did before eating their meals.
The tradition of the elders was not on par with God's law. Those were human laws. The scribes and Pharisees were choosing to place human laws on the same level as God's.
Jesus responded saying, "Nothing that enters one from outside can defile that person, but the things that come out from within are what defile."
In Southern terms, he kind of gave him a, "You best watch your mouth."
In reality, I don't think the Pharisees were really concerned with the disciples' breaking of the tradition. I've always thought that their actions were motivated by envy.
I agree. Their envy and pride led to so many conflicts with Jesus, all the way to the cross.
This week, we challenge you to ask Jesus to help you confront the inclination of sin, just like he went head to head with the scribes and Pharisees throughout his earthly life.
And we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Well, any of the readings that have not made much sense or some that really spoke to you want to dive a little deeper, check out Word on the Word at Podcast Central or wherever you like to stream your favorite shows. I'm Ace McKay as we continue with Catholics Coast to Coast. A question that we often ask is, how much do we know about ourselves? Poco A Poco is tackling that with this week's episode, exploring the journey of self-discovery from self-protection to self-acceptance and even self-possession and the ultimate self-gift, which then, of course, emphasizing the role that prayer can play when we get closer to Jesus. Let's jump into this week's conversation with Poco A Poco on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way.
Hey, I am Father Mark Mary.
Hey, I'm Father PT.
I am Father Innocent.
Hey everybody, Father Angelus.
This is the Poco Poco podcast. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome, Father
Thanks,
Mark.
Father Mark Mary.
What do we got here? I would like you to know, if you're watching on the video, you may see a colorful mat in front of me. And Father PT and his charity has brought me a Chick-fil-A children's menu place setting.
Yeah, I figured it'd be appropriate for you, especially during the podcast. If you get distracted, you could color some shapes. Find the 5 circles, the 5 squares, and the 5 triangles.
Oh, that sounds fun.
You know?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And sometimes a little messy with the drink too, so nice little table setting.
It was very thoughtful.
Yeah.
I received that with the charity with which it was.
Given
It was very intentional, very thoughtful. That's Father PT, everybody.
there he is.
Yeah. Personally thoughtful. That's what PT stands for. Or perpetually
I never heard
thoughtful.
that.
Perpetually thoughtful.
Yeah,
there's
that.
Oh, you've never heard that? I wonder why. Huh. Interesting. So I think we're kind of, summer has been happening. I guess it looks different depending on your assignment. You guys maybe had a week of summer. I
Yeah.
maybe had 2.5 months of summer because I'm in the seminary system. So what really everybody wants to know is, yes, I did set new PRs on my sister's Peloton for the 30, 45 and hour-long rides. So that happened. So everyone can sort of take a deep breath.
Breathe easy.
And just receive. Okay. That's,
Seriously.
yeah, seriously.
Seriously, yeah, you do.
Yeah. That's a big goal of mine.
Personal records, bro.
I think the big news in this friary is our postulants are no longer postulants.
Yeah,
They're
we took
novices.
the-
How did that go?
I feel like we took the kids off to college. We dropped them off. It was really beautiful. On July 22nd, we were able to have the postulant or the investiture ceremony. We were just blessed to be with them, and it's amazing. You can put on like a medieval garment and look like you just are made for this. You know, the guys look great, and they have their new names, which is awesome. And so it was just really awesome to see them kind of settle in there. And Father Angelus and that means that we have a month and a half kind of free. So we go on a retreat and home visit and those good things. So that's also exciting for us.
Do you remember all the guys' religious names?
Yeah, definitely. We have Brother Martin Guadalupe, Brother Barnabas Luke, Brother Anthony Solanus, Brother Jude Apostoli, and Brother Ezekiel Thomas, and Brother Francis Immaculata.
Nice one.
Pretty sweet names.
Yeah.
Strong names.
They were strong.
Is the apostoli in reference to Father Andrew?
Yeah, so his family has a devotion to the apostles, and so it was always kind of a part of his prayer life. So he's Brother Jude after Jude the Apostle, but then also he took apostoli because of that connection, but also Father Andrew. So it's kind of cool.
Sweet. How did you continue to teach heretical?
Bro, first of all,
dress?
number one, I just wanted to tell people publicly that I missed you this year. I even sent you pictures, right? I sent you pictures.
Yeah.
I missed you this year, and I think I've kind of mellowed out. I think I kind of just gave options. I was a lot more. I think you bring some angsty part about me, especially when you kind of push back.
So what we're talking about is when Father Innocent, the postulants get fitted for their habit for the first time, and they get taught how to wear it.
It's very possible all of them were wearing their crosses underneath.
But I just want to tell you, it was just the pitch this year was like, hey, there's a couple ways to do this. I just want you to notice that Brother Colby and I do it one way, but other people can do it other. And I just gave them. I was a little bit more open, but
that premise is false, though.
That's the issue.
There's only one right way to do it.
There's two ways to do it: a right way and a wrong way.
Yeah.
But the guys the day of when we were taking pictures in the courtyard, the guys came up to me, hey, am I wearing this the right way? I was like, yes, you are.
It's like, there's two ways you can wear your shoes. You can wear the left shoe on the left foot, right shoe on the right foot, or you can switch it and you can survive. But there's just better ways.
Good reasons. And Father Mark Mary, I think we often don't disagree on a lot of things, but I've just had to learn to live with this tension with you.
I think just for those of you who follow us, for example, on our Instagram, and you might notice a steep decline in the quality of photos. Yes, it's because our guys don't know how to wear their habits. It's no longer aesthetically pleasing. We believe in the true and the good, but apparently not.
And you
not the beautiful in this house.
You weren't here for that.
Yeah, but you weren't here. You were at home in California
on the Peloton
setting your PR. Is that what you call them? Is it like this?
PR. I mean, that's what
I know. That's what cool people call personal records, right?
Yeah. No, but 2 out of 3 of the Transcendentals is cool. That's great. I mean, not an A. Not really. I mean, you couldn't get into a good college with those grades, but
seriously.
And that's not even true because you guys do actually make the habit look good. So anyway, and that's all fun and games, everybody. I don't actually care. I mean, I see it and I do have conviction, but I don't actually
say anything.
I don't actually care. So that's how we can joke about it. What else is there? Some of you have found helpful, and I appreciate that, the episode on those who were not accepted into religious life or seminary. I wish we would have foreseen it a little bit more. It was also seemingly helpful for those who were entered and then were sort of invited to not continue. And just a reminder, there was a reason Father Angelus was invited. It didn't work out schedule-wise. You may hear him saying out there, playing the victim.
Playing the victim.
As if we forgot him. He was invited.
I'm not an expert in anything at all, but that topic could have been one that I could have contributed to.
I talked to a recent a religious sister who is their vocation director, and she found that episode really helpful. And the first thing she said was like, I just don't quite understand why Father Angelus wasn't there. Like, it was just funny because he's like, wouldn't it make sense that? But
interesting.
Because apparently he has my emails marked as spam. And he doesnn't receive them.
You too.
I talked to a lot of people who are like, no, I just got an email back from Father Angelus. I'm like, oh, interesting. Tell me what that's like. That would be beautiful.
That's not true.
It's not true. Just occasionally. Depends on the situation.
What that's like. What's that feeling like?
All right. So we're going to get into we have a couple matters of business. I guess we have where's the thing? A celebration.
What the?
I gave it to you, bro.
I don't know, bro.
Okay. That's not what we were looking for.
Looking for the award.
So anyway, next episode we'll have an announcement if you come, or we got it here. Yeah, you can hold it up.
Okay.
Oh, I should probably hold it up because I have to talk. So we got the podcast channel, Reach Spirit Juices podcast channel, on which our episodes are. Got the 100,000 subscriber number and award.
Nice.
So nice job, Spirit Juice.
Go
Thanks
team. Thanks,
everybody
Rob.
for watching the podcast, and you can always check out the video if you have not been doing that, and you can see some of our beautiful faces. Oh, look at there. Oh, hey.
It's a mirror. Well, it's a mirror.
I was a little surprised. No comments on my tan. Been working hard on that. But that's all right.
Your PR is in.
Is this your PR for your tan?
This could be a PR for my tan,
Bro.
Man, we are just in a good season apparently.
Bro, your summer has been treating you well.
Yeah, we have.
Right? I appreciate that.
Everyone. That's enough. We're moving on.
Well,
We're
you have
moving
2.5 months of summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have been using it productively, I promise.
I promise.
Been doing God's will, I think. Okay, so here's the situation, my friends. A matter of business. The donations which allow us to continue this podcast, which like we believe has been a source of grace for a lot of people, is sort of bleeding. So anyway, or hemorrhaging. So just, because the reality is when we don't mention it, we lose 10 or 20 monthly givers, donors. When we do mention it, we go back up. So we haven't been mentioning it for a few months, and so we're down a couple 150, something like that. So anyway, if you're able to support the podcast with a donation, we would be much appreciative of that. Or if you're giving a certain number and it's within your means to increase it slightly, that would be extremely helpful. And you can do that at spiritjuice.org/Poco A Poco. We are exceedingly grateful. And it helps a number of things, and it helps us be able to be here. And it helps some people. So thank you. And so what we're doing today is one of these things you might be realizing is it's like, okay, we keep putting out the friars themselves are creating resources and things like that. And so we've done a lot of studies. We did the Father book that we did, Brother Isaiah's album, Mysteries and Medicines. Hopefully we'll have something coming from Father Innocent and Father Angelus leading up to in the fall. I don't know how much information we can share about that. But what we have here is actually, it's connected to a little bit of the theme of the Mysteries and Medicines and the whole Brother Isaiah album, and sort of the Franciscan spirituality of the pilgrimage. And what we've teamed up with actually sort of the team at the Monk Manual, which is a full circle moment, because before we decided to officially not do sponsors, I reached out to one who I thought like very much fit what we were trying to do. Because I was trying to to make sure we didn't do just like random generic sponsors, but like missions that we believed in. And the one person or the one team I reached out to begin the conversation was the Monk Manual team. And so what we've done with them is put together a CFR/Monk Manual resource, which I'll talk about in a second, but also a prayer journal. And what these are, and for me, these are tools for the journey. On different levels, these are sort of resources to help us intentionally live, intentionally go about life, to make the first things first, and to live in a way that's healthy and holy and integrated. And also to sort of develop this self-awareness muscle, develop this prayer muscle, develop this capacity to be aware of what's going on in my own life, but even more importantly, more foundationally, like what's the Lord doing? What's the Lord saying? And I believe that these resources are going to help us live the type of life which allow us to do both. And so the first one, just so you know, this will just be a quick thing, and there is a reason for it. So what I'm holding up right here is the CFR collaboration Monk Manual, and this is the actual Monk Manual, and meaning this is the sort of traditional Monk Manual that we collaborated on. And again, like they have a theme which solves my dilemma. If you've heard me speak, I've struggled with the we're human beings, not human doings thing. You can all like disagree. I get it. When I say it's the Sisters of Life, they're like, well, okay, we're gonna have to talk about that after this homily. But what they have is being and doing, and I think that's what I'm talking about. Like we're human beings 100%, and the primacy on who we are, as opposed to what we do. But also we do have a mission and a life to live, and so this is just kind of a tool to help with that. And it's a discernment tool. It helps us to keep the first things first, and one of the beautiful things that Stephen, who kind of helped create it, talked about is it sort of is this integrated sort of method of like it integrates sort of the examine into our daily life in a way in which we can be aware not just at the end of the day what's going on, but throughout the day, just this greater awareness and intentionality about going through life. So this is the Monk Manual. A lot of you already use it. You can go ahead and check out the Monk Manual. You'll find it helpful. And again, this is something that it's not just a product we're pitching, but a tool that I believe could be exceedingly useful, especially in a world of dissipation. This helps to bring us back, to collect us, to live an integrated life, live an intentional life, and to be aware of what God's asking me to do, what I need to be doing in a healthy way. So that's that. And then the second thing is this. It's called the Mysteries and Medicines Prayer Journal. And this is something I'm very excited about. It may be not to knock the Father book, not to knock the Brother Isaiah album, not to knock the CFR Monk Manual. This might be the thing I'm most excited about right now. And this developed particularly through my work sometimes here as a sort of a spiritual mentor at St. Joseph's Friary, a little bit in spiritual direction, some of my work at the seminary. This is just a tool to teach people how to pray. And the Mysteries and Medicines, the idea of it is, right, like we're going about life, like let's reflect upon the mystery and what God's doing. And so this kind of takes the ARR method of, what is it? Awareness,
Acknowledge awareness. Yep.
Acknowledge, relate, receive, respond.
Beautiful. And so, but like it kind of breaks it down even more practically into like, so now we're talking about awareness. And so it has this sort of like these sort of reflection prayer prompts of, okay, like what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Kind of going deeper of like what's below the surface, and then revealing it to the Lord, having the conversation and responding. And it just kind of goes through that very, very practically. And what we're going to, first, if you feel this, I'm excited about the Monk Manual. Have you felt that? It feels, I'm very excited about how this feels. This is like, it feels great. And I just want to use it just because I want to hold it. I want to put the material on on some car seats and go for a, road trip. You know what I mean? That's what it makes me feel like I want to do. So I'm very excited about that.
Sweet.
But you're not invited.
I just felt the book.
It feels great, man. It feels really good. So we have, this is like the Our Lady Guadalupe one, which probably will be more popular with the feminine crowd, meaning women. And then we'll also have an all black one that's for everybody. But this kind of whole sort of journey, and I would say that even like the ARR type of stuff, the way of praying, it's going to fall into this broader system, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And sort of if you will, the system or the flow from self-knowledge to self-acceptance to self-possession to self-gift. So we're talking about self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-possession, self-gift. And we believe that sort of this way of praying, I feel like Monk Manual is going to be really heavy on the self-possession part. Mysteries and Medicines, the prayer journal, is going to be really heavy on sort of the self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and then sort of also the self-gift part. And so I'm going to throw it to one of our other formators here to help explain this flow, what it means, what it like, why it matters, why it's healthy to sort of spend some time reflecting on.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Father. So this little flow, this little pilgrimage, I like how you called it, is exactly the invitation that we invite guys on as they enter formation. Actually, day one of Postulancy, we present to them this journey, and so it's just awesome because it's not just for religious men, right? I think this is the journey and the formation of the human heart. Because what we want to focus on, guys, is as Father Mark Mary said, is like human beings and human doings. Like we are human beings, and it's not just about, we can't just first start and you can't like kind of. The journey is not somewhere out there. Mm-hmm. It's not just about showing up and doing all these these things. It's actually first an interior journey, right? So all the things you just said, Father Mark Mary, are part of what we call the interior life. There is something about in these things, or maybe just saying what happens in my heart as a son of God or as a son and daughter of God. How do I experience my relationship with God? How do I experience my relationships with other people? How do I experience my vocation, my mission in my life? A lot of those things are built on our interior life. What is happening in my heart, in my mind, in my soul, what is happening in my emotions. So that's just also good to know. We are men and women of a deep interior life. And so what we're talking about are the interior mechanisms or interior, IPF calls them grammar. Like how do we speak of the interior movements of our hearts, both spiritually and humanly? So that's just good to know. What we're talking about is the interior pilgrimage from self-knowledge to self-acceptance to self-possession to self-gift. I guess that's before I would dive deeper. I just want to see if anybody else has anything to comment, because I just want to first root us in the interior life.
The only thing I would add, because I think you're probably the best one to kind of define them, but before people go on this journey, we probably spend time and are at home in self-protection. And so just an interesting like concept to add in there is that because of the struggle we have in our lives, our sin, our brokenness, where we might be before we have a conversion, or where we want to go deeper in the Lord, we live life in self-protection, which allows us to not be open to what God is doing, or not be aware of what God is doing, or be afraid, right? We protect ourselves because we're afraid. We protect ourselves because we don't want to get hurt. We protect ourselves because we feel like there's no one else to help us, or no one else to do that for us. And so it's the posture by which where we enter this journey. It's just good to be aware of like where we find ourselves in that place.
Yeah. And it's, I think, a beautiful thing where the Lord desires this for us, in the sense of just having us come to a greater recognition on how he sees us, how he knows us, how he accepts us, and how he desires for us to give ourselves in this way. And I think it's a very necessary thing. And we'll talk about just sometimes maybe the reticence to go there, because it could just balancing the self-possession with kind of being too focused on myself. But I do think it's something beautiful that the Lord desires for us. And more than that, just that we can step into and just to come to understand just from a different perspective of how he loves us in this beautiful way.
So at this time, if I can send it back to one of you guys, the question I want to ask is, so like, why do we begin with self-knowledge? Why is that important? And then also just with that is, how do we be men and women who like are aware of ourselves, who have this self-knowledge, but aren't sort of self-focused and start to make it about ourselves, particularly in our relationship? Yeah, I mean, particularly in the relationship toward anyone, but the Lord first and foremost. Yeah,
so it's interesting. I'll start with that last point, because I was just talking to one of the to-be postulants. We have 8 guys that are going to come and join us in September, which is super blessed. And I was talking to one of the guys yesterday, and I send them, some reading to do, and some podcasts on story work and things like that to kind of start the journey before they get here. And he was listening to one of them, and it was just on story work, why it's important to understand our story, where we've been from, like this self-knowledge of what's happening in my heart and my emotions as I experience life. And he said, Father, I got to be honest with you. Like, I've done a lot of, like, he's been to counseling and a lot of these different things. He's like, when I listen to the podcast, that, and again, the invitation that, like, okay, where we need to grow in self-knowledge and be aware of how we live our life, and how, like, conflict and communication, and how our past and wounds affect us, like all these different things. He said, I kind of got a little, I just noticed a little resistance in my heart, because I'm so tired of just sitting around and having my whole journey be about thinking about myself and my stuff, or thinking about all my problems. And he's like, I just don't want to come to formation and do that. I'm like, me either. I don't want you to do that. That's the last thing that we want people to do when we invite them on a healing journey or a journey of conversion. This is not just self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-possession, self-gift. That word self, like, definitely locates us in the gift of our own interior life. But that's not the point. It's not just about us. And if we allow ourselves again to turn in on ourselves, it actually can be very dangerous. So I think the reason why I want to start with that little danger is because I think it's so important to first establish this whole journey or whole pilgrimage in the context of relationship. We are doing this with someone, right? One of the guys said yesterday, he's like, I just don't want to go to prayer and think about myself. Well, good news. That's not what prayer is. I want you to go to prayer and be aware of what's happening in your heart. And I want you to talk to Jesus about it. I want you to show your heart to Jesus, and what does he think? What does he see when he looks at you, right? So the good news is, guys, that we go on this pilgrimage with someone, with Jesus, in relationships. Therefore, we can never get stuck on ourselves too long. We might self-reflect, and the journey is, as we go dive more deeply into these things, we need to settle into our hearts and to experience and to be honest and to be vulnerable about what is happening. But the idea is not just for, like, to check something off the list and become more self-aware that what do you do with that? Well, the journey is, guys, that we want to notice And so then we can offer it back to Jesus, and it can be transformed.
Well, as we say each and every week, let God define who you are as we get to know ourselves. That's Poco A Poco if you want the full conversation or to catch up on ones you might have missed. Easy to find at Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast, or simply subscribe wherever you like to stream. I'm Ace McKay. Going to take a quick break, but when Catholics Coast to Coast returns, just a guy in the pew helping us to discuss how to really overcome worry. Anxiety as we head into the school year can oftentimes be fraught as we continue to trust into God, and so we really want to dive into that. So let's find out more on stories, saints, and scriptures as we check in with just a guy in the pew when Catholics Coast to Coast returns.
If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcasts today.
Welcome to The Pew, the place where everyday guys talk about everyday things in front of the one person who can do something about it, Jesus Christ. Now here's your host, just a guy in the pew, John Edwards.
Well, welcome back to The Pew, everybody. I am your host, John Edwards, and here across the table from me, as always, is my co-host and cohort, Victor Adams.
Hey, John. Good to be here today.
Man, it's good to be with you, too, dude. How you been? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's good. We celebrated a good friend's birthday this weekend, so today's Sunday for those.
Yep, so happy 50th, David. It's one day late now, but we did get to have that dinner with him, and I went fishing with him Saturday morning. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but yeah, it's been a minute. You know, we had a show that you and I had done that was supposed to come out, and then the sound was messed up, so we're going to have to redo that one. But I know Paul George has been in here. We had the Eucharistic Congress stuff, so I'm sure people are like, oh, good, Victor's back in here, because it's been a few weeks since you've been with us.
Thank you.
Man of many words, Victor Adams. But, man, I'll tell you what, I'm excited to get started today and talking about what we're going to talk about. But first, Victor, I just want to share something with you because I know this is going to mean something to you too, and I want to share it with the audience. But I was at Mass the other day, at a noon Mass, and there was a lot of people there. And after Mass, one of the ladies walked up to me, and she said, "You don't know who I am, but I pray for you by name each and every day." And I said, "Well, you look familiar." And she said, "You don't know me, but you know my son." And she goes, "My son for years has struggled with addictions, you know, painkillers, drugs, all this stuff. He got hurt on the job. We also had lost a child earlier in life, so he lost a sibling, and that's always been a trouble and a struggle for all of us, and especially him." And she said, he had walked away from his faith and all of these things. And she said, and I really was praying for him every day, but I felt like I was losing more and more hope that he would never be able to turn around and change. And she said, but then he found out about your men's group and started going to it. And she said, "John, it's changed his life." She said, "He's a miracle. Like he's going to church again now. Like he's going to your group every week. He's put down the pills and the drugs and the alcohol, and he's gone back to work." And she said, and there's just something in him. There's a hope in him that I didn't think I would ever see again in my life. And she just started crying and gave me a hug. And she said, "I pray for you every single day for the men in that group and for your ministry." And Victor, I just share that with you, one, because you're part of that group. I mean, you've been in there, and you've been in the room with this young man, and and he began to share not long ago about that struggle in his life. But yeah, the Lord has done that great work in him. But Victor, if we didn't have that group, no wonder where he'd be. Like, no telling where he'd be, right? I mean, it wasn't anything I did or you said. It was just the environment that's been created in our parish for men to be able to come and to be a part of something. And Victor, people ask me all the time, and she did too. She said, "What can I ever do to try to repay?" And I said, "Ma'am, what we need more than anything are continued prayers and support." Right? Victor, we're at a place now where we are busier than we've ever been. The demand for our work is greater than it's ever been, and we're at a place where we're going to have to bring on people. And the only way we can do that is if people support us monthly, right? And so that's why we're always talking about partners in the pew. We need people to come on beside us, whether it's $10 a month or $20 a month, $100 a month, whatever it is. Every little bit helps. And right now, more than anything, that's what we need, because the demand is outrunning the supply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've got to have more people. I want to bring in some guys. There's already some people I'm talking to be able to come in here and do some of this work to go out into parishes and do the missions and the trainings and the launchings of these groups. So men like this young man can find a place where he can find healing and hope and restoration. That's what these groups are really doing. So folks, if you've been listening to this, if you're watching, this is why you should give. Stories like that. This guy had no hope in his life. His mother was almost out of hope, praying every single day for this young man. And then he wandered into one of our events, into one of our group nights, one of our 4 pillars, and he's been coming ever since, and his life is better. He told his mother, I'm never walking away from this again. Folks, that's what we do. Just to get on the pew, we're going and starting these places where men can grow in their faith, where they can come back to the Lord, where they can get rid of all these addictions and vices and these things that have a hold on them. You can be a part of these places too. We can start them in your area, or you can give and help us start them in other places. So folks, hat in hand today, I'm asking you, if you're watching the show, if you've been moved, if you've been inspired, so many people send us those things, and I'm so appreciative of it. It means the world. But if there's any way that you could support us financially, that's what we truly, truly need. And that's what our prayers are for each and every day in the ministry, is that God will send us more people to support what we're doing, to partner with us in this ministry, so we can grow and continue to help people all around this country. So folks, you can do that by going to justaguyonthepew.com. There's a donate button on the left side of the page, a little heart. As much as you scroll, it'll be right there on every page. So you can click that, or there is a donate support button in the menu items at the top. Go there, fill it out, and become a monthly partner in the pew. Again, you don't know how many lives you can help save by doing it. So thank you guys. Victor, I just want to share that, because I know you and I hadn't really talked about that, and it was an amazing thing and a grace to have somebody come up and just say that. It's very humbling, and it just makes you realize like the Lord is doing great work here. Mm-hmm. So Victor, you're a big part of that in the podcast and our group each and every week. But today what I wanted to talk to you about was a subject that I think, again, it's something that's happened in my life. I know it's hit home to you, and honestly, if you're a human being, like you can't go through life
it's
without
touched
fighting
you in
this.
some way. Yeah.
And what it is worrying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Worry and anxiety. And the name of this episode, I mean, I haven't really quite figured it out yet, but as I was thinking about the show, I kept thinking, stop stealing from yourself,
mm-hmm.
right? Or the waste of worry, right? So I don't know what we'll wind up calling it, but both those things are the point. And this came to mind. We mentioned David, his 50th birthday, and that was Saturday. Today's Sunday, so yesterday was his birthday. This will be coming out Tuesday, a couple days after his birthday. But you and I went to dinner with him Friday night. Mm-hmm. And Friday, we had a really busy day in the ministry. I mean, I was on the phone from like 10 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon with either booking more engagements, more conferences, more missions, leadership summits, all those things, working through with people we're already working with, just a lot of stuff. And there was a lot of different things too. Like some people called me and wanted to start partnering with these different larger organizations and, really like, hey, what if we did this and we moved all these things over here and you ran this and you did that and we partnered in this way, and all good things. But you know how it is when you're doing everything you can to just keep up, like, and then all these other things are coming at you too. You're just like, oh my gosh. And you start to worry and things, and your mind starts to be preoccupied. And that's all you think about, right? Is how are we going to support the ministry? How are we going to meet the need? How are we going to all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So we go have dinner, and even during dinner, like my mom wasn't shutting off. And then David said, do you want to go fishing Saturday morning? And I said, yeah, it's his birthday, love to go. And again, sometimes I walk out in my carport in my garage and look at the boat that hadn't moved in months because we've been gone every weekend doing missions, and I started to feel anxious about that. The boat's paid for. Instead of feeling anxious, I should feel grateful that I have a boat, instead of going, oh man, it's sitting there and I'm not using it, and da-da-da-da-da. So long story short, I meet him. Jacob and I get up at 5:30 in the morning, my son Jacob and I, and we head out there, and we go to this lake right outside of Memphis where his uncle has a spot and a place. And there's trouble immediately. The trolling motor won't start. We have to rewire all this stuff. But we get out there, and it's a beautiful day. It's overcast. It's not like 100,000 degrees like it's been in Memphis lately. There's a breeze blowing across the water. We're catching some fish. But, man, I found myself just constantly thinking about work and thinking about ministry, people I got to call back, and this and this and that. And instead of doing something I love very much, fishing, and has always been an escape, my mind was just like hammered in things. Like we weren't even speaking, everybody was kind of doing their thing, and Jacob might get tangled up or something and talk. And I eventually put some music on. Well, we leave, at about 9:30. We fished about 4.5 hours or 3.5 hours, whatever it was, once we finally got in the boat and got going. But I was in the truck on the way home, and I was driving down the interstate with my son sitting there, and again, quiet and not thinking about anything. And all of a sudden, Jacob says, "Dad, like, are you okay?" He said, "We were sitting on the water, and like normally you're so playful, and you're picking at David, and you're picking at me, and we're laughing, but like you didn't say anything the whole time. And every time I'd look at you, you look sad, like you look just like you lost your best friend." And I just kind of smiled and just kind of laughed at his perception at 14 years old that he would ask that. And I just said, "Son, I'm anxious and worried over many things." And of course, I felt like Martha, right, when Jesus talks about that. But there's a lot of things going on right now, as I mentioned, in the ministry. They're all good things, but when we worry and we get preoccupied, like good things become not so good in your mind, right? You become burdened by things, which are gifts. And that's what I was thinking about. I was like, man, years ago, I was praying for one speaking engagement, one parish to be able to help. And now, they're calling every day. And so, yeah, we're going to have to staff up, and we're going to have to do all these things. Those are blessings. But the devil gets in that stuff and causes you to worry. And really, what is that, man? I mean, what is worry and anxiety? It's the definition of worry is to give way to anxiety or unease and to allow one's mind to dwell on difficulty.
Or be absent from the present.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that I know isn't only something I have to fight, right? I'm sure you have it. I know Angela is always working and worried about things, and basically everybody is, because we forget, that we're not supposed to worry, and we get mired down in it. And we'll talk about what some of the saints say and stuff like that, and even what it means to worry and the processes of that. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I'm sure you're familiar with it too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is kind of like it's the symptom of the what if scenario.
Yeah.
We're very good at playing out scenarios of what if, like, for instance, for a lot of us, 2008, the home crisis, the bubble burst, and a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people lost their homes. We were worried about that too, because I just left working in the VA hospital where it worked into youth villages, and Christy just got her real estate appraiser's license.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, I mean, you get something, you work for 2 years, and studied all that stuff, got your license, and then all of a sudden, the worst thing in the economy, for a long time, boom, house prices go down. No one can really move on. No one can sell because things are just going bad for everything. There was worry then, but but the difference is, I think we had faith to know that even though we may have to cut back a lot on what's going on, we had faith that something will, God's intervention will happen.
Yeah.
And as many
it's
people,
easy to say,
right? It is easy to say,
like.
yes, because suffering is involved in that thought moment too. Worry also brings suffering as well. If it's something that hasn't already showed itself, we are very good at manifesting, suffering as well. But as many people know, my oldest daughter, and she's always told me that she, let her tell her story. She suffered with anxiety and panic attacks, still does. But she's able to kind of cope with it, and have a coping mechanisms, and realize that, this is a panic attack, I'm okay, I'm in a safe place, so on and so forth. And if anxiety comes upon her, she realizes, okay, this is anxiety, this is only last a moment, it won't last for an eternity.
Sure.
And I think a lot of us have to kind of get to that same concept of saying, hey, I'm stressed out right now, but this feeling I'm feeling right now is only a moment.
Yeah.
And let me deal with the moment and know that, in the long term, this won't always be this way.
Yeah. And I mean, you make a good point, because anxiety, worry, they can really just stop you dead in your tracks. Like if it's severe like that, it's just, you don't want to do anything. You want to isolate. You want to sit still. You don't want to, like, you're just, it can rob you of everything. Right. And this is what I meant by like calling it like stop stealing from yourself. Yeah. And I know some people can't help it. Like they just have issues of that they either have to be medicated or they have to go through a lot of counseling and things to learn, ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm losing the phrase I was trying to say there, but like steps to be able to walk through when you're experiencing that and things. But man, it is, the scriptures talk about this a lot and about worry itself. And the funny thing is, like, the word worry actually comes from an old English word. The root of it is actually wirgan. It's Wyrgan. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it originally meant like strangle. Like that's what that word meant, where worry is derived from. And man, isn't that the truth? Because like when you get to worrying, you become like a hamster on a wheel,
Right, yeah.
and it just, you're spinning and spinning and spinning and getting nowhere. And you start to feel like that overwhelming fear and anxiety, and that almost like you're just slowly struggling to breathe sometimes, right? Where you're just like, oh man, this all of a sudden everything in the world is coming down on me. And there's a couple of great saints. You know, we always love to see what the people before us and the great saints have said about these things. There's a couple of them that have mentioned it and said different things. So like the first one, St. Padre Pio, he says, if certain thoughts bother you, it's the devil who causes you to worry and not God, who being the spirit of peace grants you tranquility. So right off the bat, he's saying, look, if you're experiencing worry and all those things, and St. Ignatius and all these different people with the discernment of spirits have said the same thing. Like, these type thoughts don't come from God. Like, God's not sitting up there going, let me whisper this in their ear and then watch them go nuts, right? Like, that's not what God does. That's the evil one. And that's what he's always trying to do, because if you're worried and you're anxious, you're preoccupied, as you said, you're not present. And I certainly wasn't in that boat, and my son even picked up on it. Like, what's wrong with you? What's going on? Because I wasn't there. I was physically there, but mentally I was not. I was somewhere else. I was back in this studio over in that corner where I work, like in my mind thinking about all these things that I could do nothing about at the time, that I really was robbing myself of time with my friend on his birthday and time with my son, and things that I had been worried about I haven't been able to do lately. Fish. I was now fishing, but I couldn't enjoy it because I was worrying about other things when I used to be worrying about not being able to fish. And it's just a never-ending cycle. And the devil does that because he's constantly trying to rob, steal, and destroy. That's what it says, right? The devil comes to plunder, right? To take everything and all of our goodness. So St. Francis de Sales goes even further by saying, anxiety is the greatest evil that can befall a soul, except sin. God commands you to pray, but he forbids you to worry. He forbids you to worry. So saying that one more time, anxiety is the greatest evil that can befall a soul, except sin. God commands you to pray, but he forbids you to worry. And this is the hard part, because worrying just seems like such a natural human thing to do, right? It seems like there's always something to worry about. There's never enough money. You never have enough time to do the job you need to do. Your kids are going to grow up and be gone before long. Like there's always something to worry about if you look for it. And the devil lays those breadcrumbs, and then he watches you kind of swirl down the drain as you enter into this sort of stuff. And it robs everyone of their peace and of the present moment. And so we're going to continue to talk about it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, what do you think about all that, what the saints are saying, and even that word strangle? Well,
that's the thing, is like, when something's being strangled, the lack of oxygen, right?
Yeah.
So when a lack of oxygen, if you want to assimilate that into a lack of hope, when you're worried so much about something, then anything of hope or anything of joy is removed from that situation. For a lot of us, we have stresses every day. I mean, like you see, financials, like, will we afford Ella to go to school? We did with Lily, we were able to do, a lot of things to get her where she is now. Will we have enough for retirement? I don't know. It seems like every time I hear a financial advisor goes, you need this amount of money to retire. I'm like, or my 401, like advisors, like, you need to put more in. I'm like, yeah, but I don't trust the stock market, man, because it goes up and down so much. It's like, I almost feel like I lose more.
First I got to get more.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like, why do I lose more than I think I feel like I'm making?
How do you become a millionaire? First, get $1 million.
Yeah, that's right. So it's kind of like, we could get all the advice of people who live in comfort, and like I said, I think for us, because we have gone through so much stress and worry, your life story, my life story, where I was planning to go in this way in my life, and then I had a sickness, a tumor, and then it actually I made my life go another way, which I have been blessed because of that. And same thing for you. You were on a trajectory of like wealth and power and privilege, and then you got to a point where something situational happened in your life to where now you're doing something where you were always probably called to do. You just didn't hear it.
Yeah.
So the great thing about it, even though when stress, anxiety, or worry or suffering comes in our lives, we think it's going to be always a bad thing, but sometimes it redirects us to where God wants us to be too.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I think the saints are saying, is that when it's obsessive anxiety, when it's something that it just is so overwhelming, then you have to be careful, like, where's the voice coming from with that?
Yeah.
You know, is that something that, you know, is pulling you away from God or pulling you towards God?
Yeah. And that's why I thought it was so interesting. Like, I love researching stuff like this for the podcast, because I was like, I wonder what the root word of that is. And it's like strangle.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that is the truth. Like, it strangles you. Like, worry strangles you, man. That's why people have heart attacks. I mean, that's why we overeat. That's why we drink. That's why we, like, I mean,
it's like the devil putting you in a sleeper move, you know?
Yeah.
Wrestling, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Father Martel would love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. Like, and it starts to rob you of everything. And it not only strangles you, it strangles those around you. Because when you're worried and you're stressed, like, you're angry, like, because you're fearful and you're afraid, and that's what it all leads to. And we'll talk about that in a second. But like I know when I'm worried and anxious, like, I'm not the nicest person to be around. Like, I'm short. I answer my wife and kids short. I get like, well, what do you mean? Like, that's a simple thing. Why did you ask that? Like, you should have been able to figure that out. Like, stuff I don't usually say and do. And it's usually when I'm worried and stressed out about something, you know? And so that's why the devil does it, because if he can get to you, the head of the family, the father, the provider, and all the stuff we've been told as men we're supposed to be, and inside we're dealing with our own inadequacies and the fact that we're not providing the way that we wanted to, or this or that, you start to worry. And then what do? Once he takes out the head of the family, he uses you to go and alienate everyone else in that fear and in that worry and in that concern. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit, like how it strangles you. And I was thinking about this is going to sound funny, but in the shower this morning, you know, or last night, I was just like, man, I really like this idea. And then I started thinking, I was like, I almost busted and, like, you know, broke my head getting out of the shower you know, to get a pencil and write something down. But it really starts with this. Like, where does worry start? It starts with a lack of trust in God. It really does. When we start thinking about something and our mind starts going down these pathways, and next thing you know, you're in some Armageddon scenario, like, in your life. And it's because you're forgetting that there's a God who loves you. Right. And there's a God who has a plan for your life. And there's a God that if you're giving your life to him and you're trusting him, that he plans nothing but for your good.
Right. He created you.
Right.
He created you for a reason and purpose. He loves you.
Yeah.
Why would he allow the worst thing ever to happen to you? You know, in a sense.
Yeah.
I think we have to realize that he doesn't wish anything bad. Oftentimes we do the bad things to ourselves.
Yeah. And it's like he says, like Jesus says, like, what kind of father would hand a man a snake when he is a child a snake when he asks for a fish?
Yeah.
Right. It's that kind of thing. But that when you have that lack of trust in God, and you don't even realize it, it's like, well, no, I love God and I go to church and all those things. Yeah, you can do all those things and really not trust God with your life. Every single one of us struggles with trust. Surrender is the hardest thing to do in our faith, is to fully surrender. But you have to learn to trust God. And in those moments, you're like, that's when you can go, okay, you know what? God's never let me down. So why would he this time, right? Things may be difficult, but he's not going to abandon me, right? Again, Jesus leaving the 99 to go after the one. Like, he you know, he even knows the hairs on your head, all those things. And we'll go through some Bible verses here in a minute. But it starts with this lack of trust, which leads then, like, when you don't trust God, you think, oh, well, God's not going to, I don't know if he's going to handle this or not, so I need to step in. So that lack of trust leads to a retreat towards self-sufficiency, right? Like, I have to figure it out. I have to do it myself. And when you get in that mindset, then you start to figure out, oh man, I can't do this myself, or this isn't in my control. And what can I do about it? And I can't see the future. And you start to worry and all those things, which eventually leads you to, oh gosh, I can't figure it out, and I don't trust God. Now I know I'm not enough now. And then that inadequacy that's in all of us starts to rise, and the devil starts to play in that. And you start thinking like, man, I'm inadequate. I can't do this. That leads to fear. Right? I'm afraid. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my daughter to go to school, or Jacob to go to school, or I don't know what's going to happen in this ministry. We lost some donors last month. So what's going to happen now? We really needed that money, and how are we going to make that up? And like, all of a sudden you get fearful, right? And then you get scared. And when you get fearful, what do? You worry, right? When that fear hits you, then you start all those questions: what, why, how, when. All those things start to come to mind, and it starts to just take over, and it causes it leads to a loss of peace and joy and presence, and you wind up losing your grasp on the truth. And that truth is that God will never abandon you. Right? When you lose that idea, you lose your gratitude too. And that's what I was thinking in that boat, and when I was telling Jacob in the truck. I was like, son, I was really preoccupied. And I said, it doesn't make sense, son. Because every time I've ever been worried in the ministry, like, I started this nonprofit, we had no money. I gave like $2,000 to lawyers, started. I had no money. I was sitting on the floor for weeks going, okay, God, I got a nonprofit. I'm not working. There's no money coming in. My family's suffering. Like, what? Come on, man. 2 weeks later, I get a call from a guy I barely know. We started Virtual Catholic Conference, which launched all these virtual conferences in the church.
During COVID,
during COVID, and gave me a way to provide for my family for many months until this started growing and taking off. God's always been there, right? He didn't abandon me in that jail cell, right? He allowed Angela and gave her the grace to forgive me and to stay with me, right? He's never left me in anything. So, and we can lose our memory of that, of those moments where God has shown up, where God has proven himself. We forget, and then we get scared. And when we get worried, we get scared, we lose our gratitude, and everything starts to take over. And Victor, that's where most people get, and that's where we start to struggle.
Yeah, I think a lot of us forget to do the thankful inventory look. Like, how did I get to where I am? You know? And a lot of us, if we really go back in hindsight, we see where God's hand, God's influence, the influence of other people that God's working through helped us to get to where we are. You know, a community of faith is a big thing. It's just not your parish, your church. It's other believers who see something in you, who see that you're a hard worker and maybe need a break. You know, and they give you that shot, that opportunity.
Sure.
Like, you know, the boss, you know, his name's Sid, and I won't tell his last name because I didn't get permission for this.
Sure.
But you know, like I was, you know, after working in like a while for a place like Youth Village, which I love, but it was just so hard. I had a young family. I was working 8 to 8, you know, and barely getting paid for that, you know. And then I took a break, and I was a stay-at-home dad for about 6-7 months, and then, you know, we had 2008 came around, you know, all that stuff. So it was kind of like I got to go back to work, but then I worked somewhere. But then, you know, this guy took a shot on me and said, hey, you know, for business development, you know, I didn't know what that was, and so he said. He interviewed, and I did well, and you know, and I got the job. And so I've been in business development for 10 years, working with behavioral health and mental health and substance abuse facilities, and being that connector for people needing help. You know? So in a way, one person gave me that opportunity to expand the influence I can in the kingdom to get people where they need to get, because they're dealing with a lot of traumatic experiences, but also addiction stuff too. Yeah. And kind of what you're saying too is that, you know, when we look in the past where God's hand was there, we have to realize that hand will always be there. Sure. You know, and not be so consumed. Well, yeah, he helped me here, and he helped me here, and there, and there, and there, and there. But I don't know if he can do this now. You know, I don't know if you can help me out with what's going on now, because this is crazy. I don't know how you're gonna do this. You know. But
well, and it's also, it reminds me of that, what you're saying reminds me of that footsteps in the sand prayer, like poem or whatever it's talking about. There were these two footsteps where you were walking with me, and then God, all of a sudden, there was only one. Where did you go? And he said, that's when I was carrying you. Yeah. Right? Like that's, I had you in my arms. I was carrying you. And it's something that it's something that he does every day in our life. Right. If we just forget, because of wounds and abandonment issues and all these things in our life, there's been people that have left us. There's been people that we thought we could depend on that hurt us. All those things. I mean, that's why we talk about healing and wounds and all those things all the time. So that adds to worry, and that's what adds to your fear of not being able to trust God, or that God's not going to show up and handle things. But he has spoken to us all throughout Scripture and throughout the saints, with all the saints, about how he's going to take care of us. And I just want to rattle off some of them real quick. I've got a lot of them here, but I want to read them, and then of course I'll give you the verses, and we'll have them in the show notes. But I mean, Philippians 4:6-7 through Paul, he says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That's an example. 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Right? So there's Peter. In the Psalms, Psalm 55:22, cast your burden on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Then you hear it from Jesus himself when he's talking about his Father in Matthew 6:25-34. He says, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life and what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you no more of value than they? And which of you by being anxious can add a single hour of its to his span of life. And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these.
The power of community, the challenges of ministry life, and the importance of prayer. Great stuff to overcome worry and anxiety this week with Just a Guy in the Pew. If you want to hear the full conversation or catch up on what you might have missed, always available at Podcast Central. Go to EWTN.com/podcast. Have a great rest of your Labor Day weekend fun and enjoy the grill. In the meantime, remember to let God define who you are. I'm Ace McKay, and I'll see you again on Catholics Coast to Coast.